Listen up. We are back with another episode of the Construction Mentor Podcast. My name is Ike. I am your host. You can follow me on TikTok, Instagram, and YouTube at the Construction Mentor. If you just type in Construction Mentor, it should come up by now. But what are we here to do? We're here to promote the construction industry. We want everyone to know that construction is the place to be to build the life of your dreams, whatever that looks like. The car, the house, the family, the vacations, work-life balance, entrepreneurship, whatever that looks like, all those opportunities are there for you. And we want to make sure that you're aware of those opportunities. What do those paths look like? Where are those doors? How do you walk through them? How do you take advantage of them? To do that, the first way that we do it is we like to bring on guests. We bring on guests to share their story about what they do, how they got to do what they do, and how they found success, especially if they came over different obstacles throughout their life. And then we also like to have episodes where we share knowledge about the industry, not only to paint a picture, an accurate picture for people who want to come into the industry, but to help the people who are already in the industry get to the next height in their career. And that's what we're going to do today. Now, before we get into our topic, I do want to highlight that there is a course on construction project management that is available at the link in my bio. Go check that out. The link has some free videos. It explains what a construction project manager is, what that looks like a day in the life, and then what a career can look like and what that pays at each stage in your career. So go check that out. I highly recommend it. I built the course basically off of what I would want somebody to do or what any general contractor would want somebody to do on day one. And for whatever reason, they're not teaching it in college. I don't care if you went for engineering or construction management or whatever. Every time we get a new candidate in the industry, everybody would agree. You can go pull contractors all over the place. We have to teach them as though we're teaching them from scratch. So that course is built for that, what we need people to be able to do on day one. And who I really think it's ideal for is somebody, if you're in the trades and you want to go into the office, or you're just looking to get up to that next level. Maybe it's superintendent or assistant superintendent and work your way up to project manager. Or maybe it's just to even get a different kind of exposure and a different feel for what it's like to work for a different type of contractor. So the first half is tailored towards construction administration and leadership skills and contracts and scheduling and all the front end stuff of project management. And then the last half of it, the last 20 hours, is 14 different trades, what knowledge you would need and what typically gets screwed up by the different trades or by general contractors throughout a project. So again, go check that out. Links in the bio and any major platform, you can find that there. Now, today, what I wanted to talk about was architects versus contractors. And I put a poll up on my Instagram about a week ago saying, what do contractors or trades hate about architects? Obviously, that's an aggressive word. And do they truly actually have hatred for them? Maybe, maybe not. But it's really just more speaking towards like what drives contractors nuts about architects and what they do. And I think a lot of it is valid, but I think a lot of it, contractors just don't have the perspective on how architects operate and how their job is structured based on the way clients come to them and want them to work and what they want to pay for. So I want to address what those are. I think it's very important for people coming into the industry because you'll hear people complain about architects and about the way certain people work in different project teams. And even if you have a good mentor, sometimes what people complain about, isn't entirely accurate, right? And you don't really get that until you get your own perspective 5, 10, 20 years down the line. So I want to play a little bit of devil's advocate. And I also want to, maybe even for the young architects out there, point out some things that make the contractor's life a little bit difficult and how maybe you can avoid them or maybe how you can bring more value. So again, what do trades and contractors hate about architects? So the number one piece of feedback that I've gotten is that architects don't take responsibility, which is a very interesting thing to say. And what do they not take responsibility about? If something's missed on the drawing or a detail doesn't work or maybe the dimensions are off, whatever that may be, then they feel as though that the architect is kind of looking for a scapegoat and they're looking to put it on the contractor, but they're looking to put it on really anybody but themselves. And there's one pretty big piece of information that I don't think a lot of contractors understand coming from the architect's side, right? So if you're in a contract with an owner and you're an architect and that owner is in a contract with a contractor as well, that's their check and balance, right? Those two entities are going to check each other. The architect's going to make sure that the contractor's doing their job and the owner's getting everything that they should be paying for. And the contractor is also going to kind of check the architect and make sure that that design actually works and take a little bit of responsibility for what goes in place and point out if they miss something or if something doesn't work. Here's the issue with that. General rule of thumb in a lot of different, and this can differ on the scale of the size of the project, but the design cost for a project is typically a factor of 10 what the construction will cost. What does that mean? If you have a construction project that's $10 million, you may pay $1 million for the design, right? So if there's an issue, if there is an error or omission, right? If they either design something wrong or they miss something on the design, that would be an omission, then the owner wouldn't look at the contractor to pay for it. They would look at the architect or the engineer to cover that cost. There's a problem there, obviously. If their work is only worth $1 million, but then they have to cover the cost of something that they missed or got wrong, and the project itself costs $10 million, they could very easily end up basically encompassing their entire contract value trying to fix something in the field or paying for something that needs to get fixed in the field. That obviously doesn't work. A few errors and omissions that could absolutely bankrupt a design team. Okay. So oftentimes when they are trying to alleviate themselves of responsibility, they are avoiding taking on such a claim. Now, to cover that cost, how does an architect typically cover that cost? They have what's called errors and omissions insurance. Just like your insurance policy, you don't want to make claims on it because then your premium's going to go up. Then you will have a KPI that certain clients won't want to work with you. The ripple effect and the negativity that come with making a claim against errors and omissions insurance is substantial. It's not something that you're going to want to do. So you have to kind of defend your design and what you've done as much as you possibly can, while making sure that the client's still happy with you, that the project's still successful, yada, yada. And if you're a contractor, what's the benefit in helping the architect or engineer defend themselves in that situation? They are with the client far before we ever are, typically, right? Whether you're a mechanical contractor or electrical contractor or you're a general contractor, whatever it may be, oftentimes the best way that we can get positioned to win a project or even to be in a negotiated situation for a project, right? Not bidding against other people, but a client just negotiating with us for the price. You actually win it before you even decide what the price is when an architect or an engineer recommend you as the contractor that they would like to see on the project, right? So by creating win-win scenarios for the design team, you're setting yourself up for a better business in the future, right? So you do have an incentive. It is not a zero-sum game on a project-by-project basis to, defend the architect and make them look good, or to deflect any kind of responsibility, to them, or effectively play the blame game to them and try to push off all the blame onto them, right? Now, that's playing devil's advocate for the architect and the engineer. There is definitely some credence to the notion that they don't want to take responsibility just out of pride for their work. Same way contractors don't want to look in the mirror and admit that they did something wrong, or they installed it wrong, or they bought the wrong spec, or whatever that may be, right? Sometimes people just don't want to admit that they're wrong. So that definitely does happen. And this leads into the segue for the next complaint, again, as I polled people for what they hate most about architects from the contractors and trades, and that's unfinished plans or a bid set that comes out. Right. So what is a bid set? A bid set is when the architect and the engineer, they basically push out a set of drawings for contractors to price, but it's not necessarily ready for permit, and it's not necessarily ready for a complete construction set. It is not the final documents. More changes are coming. Now, the notion that this set came out because that's what the architect wanted to do is not accurate, right? They don't issue those drawings just because they wanted to do it that way. They do it that way because the owner wanted to do it that way, or the owner's rep wanted to do it that way for whatever reason. And sometimes general contractors might want to do it that way just because they're chomping at the bit to get some sort of pricing going and to get the wheels turning. And that's a mistake, right? I hate bid sets. Obviously, I had enough comments to to note adequately that bid sets are not a good idea and that it frustrates everybody, because the notion that you're going to price something, or pricing takes, you can get 80% of the pricing done and then you're just fine tuning the rest when the next set of drawings comes out. That's false. Actually, it slows things down, because then what happens is that a new set of drawings will come out and they have to scan them entirely to make sure that they catch all of the changes, and they're trying to be vigilant and find needles in haystacks to make sure that they are aware of every single little thing that changed. Whereas if they just got one set of drawings one time, the pricing procedure would be much, much, much simpler, right? So the question is, again, why do they get unfinished plans and why do they get a bid set? And oftentimes that comes not from the architect and the engineer, it comes from the owner or the owner's rep. And it's from a misconceived notion that they can gain a little bit of efficiency by starting the pricing process early, when really it just causes more confusion and it raises the level of risk and what contractors have picked up for scope on the job. Now, even worse with that is when the new plans or the permit set comes out, or the construction set comes out, or the addendums come out right before the bid is due, and then everybody's scrambling to do everything that I just said at the last second and get accurate pricing in to the owner that encapsulates all of the scope. And again, when you crunch down the amount of time that somebody has to absorb something and to take in all of the contract documents and try to find all the changes and make sure you have that, the level of risk is going to be raised, and the quality of the bid, the quality of your confidence in the number is going to go down, because you threw a curveball at them at the last second. Now, hold on to that thought, contractors. Have you ever considered if the same thing happened to the engineer and to the architect? The same things happen to them that you complain about, and it's not their fault. Now, just in the same way I say all the time that general contractors have a responsibility to educate their owners to make better decisions and to put themselves in a better place to run a project adequately, architects and engineers have the same responsibility as well. But when it comes down to it, too often clients jump up and down, or they slam their fists on the table and they say, no, you don't have 3 months to design this. You have 2 months to design this because I need to start construction on X date. So just like contractors get compressed and just like they get curveballs at the last minute, the engineers and the architects are getting the same thing, right? So not only are they being compressed, but they may have questions that they're waiting on the response to, or they may get a scope change or something at the last minute from the client, and they have to jam it into a drawing. And they might not have time to do the due diligence that they want to do on a drawing set entirely to make sure that you get something good that is 100% biddable, 100% constructible, and everybody can capture the scope and all of those things, right? It's just a little bit short-sighted that a lot of contractors don't take the time to understand that. Number one, they don't get the same time, or they don't get the time that they would like to put into the job, or the owner may just not want to pay for that level of diligence because they don't understand the economics of how that's going to pay in the long run. Obviously, just like we do in construction, the more time and effort you spend in pricing and planning, the less the job will cost over time and the shorter the schedule of the project will be. It's a really tough sell. Anybody that's ever tried to sell a client on that and get them to understand that, it is a really tough sell, especially when they only have so much money on the front end. So, playing devil's advocate for the architects and the engineers, they go through the same things that we go through. When it comes to the quality of the drawings, it isn't always just about what is missed on a set of drawings or how diligent the drawings are. Quite often, there's too much on the drawings, so it can go in the other direction as well. And contractors hate that. That was the next piece of feedback, is that there's too much on the drawings. What do I mean by there's too much on the drawings? Too often, engineers and architects, they include boilerplate details and specifications on drawings. Number one, because they're copying and pasting. And number two, because they're just trying to make a blanket statement to cover anything and everything that could possibly be on a job and what their standards may be. I'll give you an example. They may have details for an ADA ramp or a staircase coming into a building on a drawing for a project that doesn't have those things. But it's on there because it was a boilerplate and it's a standard portion of their details, right? So I'm sitting there and I'm trying to price a project and I'm looking and it's like, why is there details for a ramp here? There's got to be a ramp somewhere on the drawing. And now I wasted 20 to 30 minutes trying to figure out that it actually doesn't exist and that I actually didn't need that detail, right? So not only does that create ambiguity with the intent of the scope, but now I don't have faith that everything on the drawings are there intentionally. And now I have a reason to believe that part of the design and part of the specifications are up to my interpretation, which now means that I may put in an alternate HVAC unit or I may put in an alternate spec for a door. And I have a good reason to believe that because the last 5 projects that I did, those things didn't matter. I think to a project that I just did for one of the biggest retailers in the world, they're probably in your pockets. You might even be listening or watching on one of their devices. They were calling for 12 gauge welded metal frames at every door on their job site. That is overkill. You typically don't see those types of heavy duty welded frames on projects unless it's like a prison, a place where you really expect the door frame to take a beating and to take a lot of traffic and to have heavy security on it. So a lot of the contractors, and we were doing this rollout across the country, they assumed that it was the wrong spec. They assumed that it was a mistake, that it was a boilerplate, and they bid it as such. And we had to go and untangle that. So there's a reason that boilerplate details are there. I think you also see the same thing from contractors when they put boilerplates, what we would call a boilerplate. And again, I didn't define what a boilerplate was, but a boilerplate is just typically a standard. It's almost like the product information that you would see on a boiler. And it's something that just gets kind of slapped on there. So it's a standard that gets slapped onto a drawing or a spec, or in a contractor situation, a proposal. Quite often, contractors will have boilerplate exclusions, inclusions, exclusions, whatever they may be, on their proposals. And the same thing kind of goes, right? It's like, is it supposed to be there? Do you just put that there on all the projects? Is there a reason? Are you excluding something specifically because you saw something that I, as a general contractor, don't see, or as an architect, don't see on the drawing, or maybe I miscommunicated something, or maybe I did make a mistake? So boilerplates hurt in all kinds of directions. And typically when it comes to the architects and the engineers, it's just a matter of time. And unfortunately, a lot of the time it is because they want to CYA. They want to cover your ass or cover their own ass when they do that. So if you are a young architect or an engineer and you can try to thin out all of the boilerplates and only have relevant information on the drawings, you are going to get a much more conducive experience and a successful project. You're going to be setting up the construction team for success much better. And in turn, that's going to make you look better when it comes out that way. So it doesn't end there. And obviously, we're talking about drawings because that's what architects and engineers do. But the next thing that is a huge complaint for contractors are overlays, which is basically comes down to coordination between disciplines. What do I mean by that? Is the structural plan coordinated with the architectural plan? Is the electrical plan coordinated with the architectural plan? Is the reflected ceiling plan coordinated with the electrical plan, right? So architectural versus structural, what could go wrong? You might have columns that aren't in the right place. You might have columns or part of the structure that doesn't fit in what they're showing on the architectural plan. Or maybe the structure doesn't allow enough space for the HVAC to go in above the ceiling on the architectural plan. Maybe the architectural plan calls for 20 light fixtures on a project, but the electrical plan only calls for 18 fixtures on a project. Now you have ambiguity, and it's like, which drawing set am I supposed to follow? Which one am I supposed to price? And again, if that was done and it was done adequately, contractors would be set up in a much more efficient situation to price it accurately, and then to actually procure everything that they need and install in the field. And it's extremely frustrating for contractors. Contrary to popular belief, most contractors do not want to riddle a project or an owner with change orders. I know that architects and engineers often feel that way, but they don't want the headache. The contractors are going to make much more money and have much less of a headache if they can just, without question, install things and procure them the right way the first time and deliver it successfully without any sort of haggle of a change order. But to the contractor's credit, this happens way too often. And it shouldn't happen in 2025. We're almost in 2026, where we have so much software and probably even AI at this point that could make sure that these things are coordinated and at least flag them for you. And I think On the larger projects, this probably happens less since they are all coordinated in 3D and you have integrated project designs. Where this really hurts is on the smaller stuff, especially the renovations of the more service type stuff, right? Because you're not putting in that same type of effort into the design or the integrated modeling, and it is a much faster pace. So these things can fall through the cracks. And let's be honest, oftentimes you have younger engineers and architects doing these types of things, so they don't know any better. And the same thing goes for ceiling heights, right? So on a ceiling height, as I just said, you may have a beam that is 12 inches thick below deck, and then you may only have 6 inches between the bottom of that beam and the top of the ceiling grid or the ceiling assembly. And you also have to have a thickness of fireproofing on a beam. Now you're down to just 4 inches or 4.5 inches or 5 inches in between the bottom of the fireproofing and the top of the ceiling. Oh, and by the way, the ceiling, you think it's a 10-foot high ceiling, but the ceiling assembly is 2 inches. So now that's actually the top of the ceiling is at 10 foot 2. And now you only have 2.5 inches and you can't get a pipe, a conduit, a sprinkler line, or a duct through that, right? So too often we don't have adequate space to fit the MEPs, the mechanical, electrical, and the plumbing with the structure, with the architectural. And it goes back to that comment at the beginning that oftentimes the architect and the engineer just don't have time. And the client may not have paid for them to go into that level of coordination. They may have been sold, or they may think that it's a good idea to deflect that coordination down to the contractors. So you need, as a contractor, you need to be aware of what you're buying and how much of that design was delegated. They call it a delegated or deferred design down to the contractor, and you need to include that effort in your proposal. Right? Now, let's say maybe that is included, maybe that was the intent, maybe it wasn't. Again, and especially on the smaller renovation and tenant improvement projects, just like your general contractors, your HVAC contractors, your carpentry contractors, the younger people tend to be working on this. They may just not have the experience to know any better. And it may hurt and it may be a pain to try and take them under your wing now. But trust me, when you take somebody aside, a younger person, and you invest that effort into them to explain to them why something doesn't work, and you effectively try to help them get in a situation to win, in 1, 3, 5 years down the road, when they climb up the ladder and now they're the big exec trying to recommend people for jobs, you're going to be at the top of the list, right? So I always try to push, especially on the younger people in construction. It's really easy to get in the habit to feel like you're in a zero-sum game, and on a project-by-project basis, try to make sure that only you win and maybe other people lose. Oftentimes, everyone thinks that everybody else has to lose at all costs in order for them to win. That's just not the case, right? A successful project is when you set up everybody around you as a client, everybody up in a way to succeed and to look good and to want to work with each other again. And that oftentimes is going to mean that you try to help somebody get through or cover up their mistakes or make their mistakes work. So ceiling heights was another one. And then the next one is actually one of my favorites. And it just keeps going back to, again, the initial intent and how much time an architect and an engineer actually get on a project to do certain things. Existing conditions. Too often, there are notes on drawings that will basically tell the contractor to go verify something in the field. Verify a dimension, this structural wall is this far away from this structural wall. Go verify the slope of a floor is a certain way. Go verify, the existing electrical box is there, per what the as-built says, whatever it may be, right? There's a million things that could be on a drawing that the architect or the engineer wants the contractor to go verify to make sure their design works with. And the architect is basically could be just working on an as-built drawing, may be accurate, may not be. Could be a 20-year-old drawing that has been in the boiler room of some building for the last 20 years, or it could be in a share file or a hard drive that an owner's had for 10 years or whatever that may be. And they may be in a different city. They may be designing something in San Francisco, but the architect sits in Chicago and the client didn't want to pay for them to go out there and actually do that, due diligence and verify these things. So what happens oftentimes too is they may be working with one of the larger architects and they may say, hey, I have 30 projects at these locations spread out. I need all these designs done in 3 months. the architect and the design team physically can't get to all of those locations in that amount of time. It's just impossible. It's just not something that they're going to be able to do. Just like if you were a contractor, picture being a national contractor and they came to you with 30 projects and they wanted you to go do a site walk on every single one as you price these jobs. Okay, how much time are you going to give me? Are you going to pay a pre-con fee for me to fly to all 30 of these locations and verify all of this stuff? Or are we going to proceed with pricing and proceed with design with the information that we have and try to carry a contingency for anything that may come up? That's typically how that conversation goes. And that's why it sucks, but that's the situation that we often find ourselves in, right? So verify in field, it sucks. It's tough, but the best thing that you can do as a contractor, and especially if you're young, when you see these notes, that is a red flag. That is something that you need to go find out. And when you're doing your submittal process, again, what are submittals? Submittals are the first thing that contractors, whether you're a subcontractor or a general contractor, they're going to want you to do. Your submittals are all the information, the product information that you take and you send to the architect and the engineer and you say, hey, I'm going to buy this TV. I'm going to buy this HVAC unit. These are the exact specs. This is the exact one that I'm going to buy and I'm going to install. And they sign off on it and they say, yes, you can do that. That meets my design requirements. When you do that and you have things getting fabricated in the field, or even if you're going to build a wall, you do a layout on the floor and you have them come out and confirm that those dimensions work, that their design is being met, right? That's a layout. When you're doing the submittals, you have to confirm that especially with shop drawings, that the design is met. Yes, I'm going to make a railing. I'm going to fabricate it to be this high, this wide. The posts are going to be this wide. It's going to be this kind of material. And at the end, it's going to be powder coated with white paint. You want to make sure that all that information is there with the exact dimensions. And recommend that they come out and do a field walk to confirm, but that they sign off on all of those things. Too often, especially with the small projects, people run fast and the subcontractors think that they kind of have the autonomy and they think they know what to do and that it's going to be right. But in the formal world of construction, you need to build time in your schedule for the proper submittal process to make sure that you have time to do the shop drawings, to get it over to the design team, that they can make comment on it, that you can change those comments, which what I just described should take 5 to 6 weeks, and then maybe even come into the field to review that physically laid out on site so that everyone's 100% confident that they're on the same page. And now you can go have that fabricated. That railing comes back 6 to 8 weeks later, it comes in on site, and now everybody should be happy when that goes in, right? But that's really where those notes come from, right? It's typically because either they want you to do a shop drawing and then have all of those meetings, and or they weren't given time or money to go confirm those things themselves. And I know what you're thinking. You're saying, well, that's not my problem, right? But that's just a loser attitude. So as I said, we're going for win-win-win scenarios in every direction. Now, the next part of the process, a lot of what we just talked about was what happens when you get drawings in your hand, and then we went into the submittal process. Now let's go into construction. What's the big thing in the construction process that contractors hate about architects and engineers? I'm throwing in the engineers there too, but it's RFI responses, right? So RFI responses, these can suck for a couple of reasons. Number one, they hate how long they take to get a response. They also hate that when they get the response, it's either not a clear direction, it causes confusion, or they're asking the contractor to do something that they don't get paid to do, right? So what does that look like? You say you give them an RFI response about a flooring type, and they say, okay, well, that flooring type won't work here. Contractor to make a recommendation, and you're like, okay, well, like out of what? Like give me some information, give me something to start on. Do you want a blue carpet? Do you want a broadloom? Do you want a carpet tile? Do you want hardwood? You know, what size planks do you want? What kind of look are you going for? Like, give me something. And now we're kind of in this back and forth. We're wasting time because we have no direction and we're contractors and we're like, dude, I'm a dumb contractor. I get paid from the neck down. You tell me what you want and I'll price it. And the architect's looking at you and he's like, well, or she is like, well, I don't really know, but you told me this doesn't work. So I need you to tell me something that does work. This is where I think AI is going to help a lot of people. But this can happen, right? And I always, let's play devil's advocate. Let's challenge the contractors on what they should be doing or what they're not doing in the RFI process to get a good response, right? How good is your RFI? If you're a general contractor, did you just take a RFI from the flooring guy and just send it over without reading it? Is the question already on the drawing? They just didn't look that hard. Is it even in clear English? Like some of our contractors, let's be honest, they're kind of cavemen. They don't know how to articulate their point or ask a question adequately. Did you rewrite it? Does it make sense? That's the first thing. The second thing, how clear is it? Do they know exactly where it is on the drawing? Did you peel out that one drawing, or did you take a snapshot of the one part of the drawing that you're looking for and say, hey, this is where my question is? Is it a field issue? Did you take a picture of where it is in the field? Is it clearly marked? Do they understand where it is in the field? Did you put a deadline on it? Did you put a cost associated with it? How urgent was it? Did you put bells and whistles on it? Hopefully everything's not urgent, because if everything is urgent, then nothing is urgent. But how well did you spoon feed the architect to give you a clear answer? If you take ownership in that process and you highlight the urgency and you give them all the information and you give them suggestions or options to answer that RFI, that will enable them to give you a clear answer. I love this quote from Teddy Roosevelt, but Teddy Roosevelt said, proposing a problem or complaining about a problem without proposing a solution is called whining, right? So not only do you want to spoon feed them all the information to have a good RFI and to get a clear answer, but take the opportunity to make a suggestion, right? I recommend the wall gets framed this way. I recommend we change the sprinkler head layout to be this. I recommend we select, this type of ceiling diffuser or resize the ductwork to be this way for this reason. Give them one or two options. And what that enables you to do is you can dictate what that answer is a little bit, right? You can make it more favorable to you for install, for logistics, for efficiency. Maybe you can even make a little more money, whatever that may be. Take the opportunity, spoon feed them the information, and plant the solution that you would like to see in your mind to make your life easier and make yourself more money. And try to use Inception, if you remember what that movie is, but try to use Inception to get that outcome or get that response out of them. If you're not giving them a clear question and you're not giving them a clear response, or you're not giving them an opportunity to make up their mind for them, then you're not doing everything that you can to give them to make them give you the right response or give you a clear response. Part of that, and this is what architects complain to me about all the time, is that we don't do a good job of communicating what's hot and what's not. They can only handle so much on their plate, just like you can. So tell me what you need to know right now, and I will drop what I am doing, and I will give you an answer for, what type of garbage disposal I want in the sink, right? If everything is urgent, then nothing is urgent. But if we don't do that and that lingers for 2 weeks and we're like, oh, well, hey, on the RFI, it says that, I needed this back in 14 days and it's been 3 weeks and you haven't responded and now I'm behind schedule. They're like, okay, well, that 14 days is just a boilerplate. Going back to the original comment about boilerplates on drawings, I didn't know that it was urgent. And now you're asking me to drop what I'm doing and now I don't have time for it. And now you're basically holding a gun to my head saying, hey, if I don't have this, then the project's behind and it's my fault. Again, we do boilerplates too. Take the initiative to make sure that you're managing their workload and they understand what the repercussions are ahead of time, not on a moment's notice, ahead of time to get adequate answers to these RFIs. Now, if you're doing all that, then yeah, sometimes the RFI responses, they do suck and they are unclear. And the reason why is because, number one, they're either overwhelmed. Number two, they're either just not looking at it. Maybe they're just incompetent. But number three, what architects are often trying to do is they're trying to deflect responsibility down to the contractor so that they don't have to assume responsibility for whatever, again, design error, omission, or whatever decision is going to be made, right? So we as contractors have to get all of the written direction, very clear direction, so nothing is up for interpretation and we need to protect ourselves. But in order to do that, we have to give them ample notice. We have to make sure they understand what the repercussions are. And we give them all the information that they need to give us a response within that time. Now, there's two more things here, and I'm going to go over them very, very quickly. But design change is too late in the game. And the best example that I have for this is audio-visual or low voltage, right? So there's too many times where we go to mobilize on a project and we're building, and maybe we even get the walls framed and roughed and maybe drywall's on, right? And we're taping and sanding. And then, a bulletin comes out, right? And the bulletin comes out and it's like, oh my God, I need to put all of this conduit in all of the walls, and I need to add all of these rings and strings everywhere so that we can put in all these audio-visual devices or low voltage security devices all over the project. And I just closed the walls. It is too late. Why does that happen? This often goes back to the design team not getting enough time on the front end. Right. And that's the best example that I have. But the owner will have their priority list and decisions that they need to make. And at the bottom of that list always seems to be certain things like AV or maybe finished specs, what flooring type or a countertop type, or maybe a layout for whatever kind of equipment that they have on a coffee bar with a coffee and a sink and a ice machine or whatever that may be. Right. And since those get kicked down the road, the architect might be begging for it, but they just might not get it until late in the game. And then it's a cluster basically to jam those things in late. So oftentimes it's not the architect's fault. And oftentimes they're just waiting on the owner to finish some of these specs and finish actually what they want in the use of the spaces, etc. And then other times on the owner side, they get the end users involved way too late in the game. They'll start walking the job site, and the end user, it's a hospital, maybe it's a doctor, or if it's an office, maybe it's a conference room or an area that a certain team is working in or something like that. And they look around and it's like, well, I can't operate like this. Like that door needs a card reader, and all of these desks, they need, 5 outlets underneath so that, we can plug in our computer and this device and that device and all of these things, right? So it's really important that we as contractors do the best that we can to try to force those conversations with end users, to do a walkthrough, especially in a layout, like when architectural, layout happens on the floor, bring the hey, can we bring your end user in? I just want to make sure before I frame this wall and rough this in that this is going to be right and that, they're going to be happy with what they're living with. Unfortunately, too often, the architects and engineers, they don't ask for that, or they do ask for it and they don't get that from the owner. But if you're a contractor, it is very good to drive those conversations and try to make sure that that happens, right? The earlier, the better. You include that in pricing, but you definitely want to do it before you actually start framing and roughing stuff in. Unfortunately, late changes suck. And the worst part about it is that, it causes change orders. And then there's an argument about, regular pricing or pricing at the time of bid versus change order pricing, and that being inflated. And then everyone's kind of doing a point and match and a blame game and beating each other up and telling everyone that everyone's trying to take advantage of each other. And, that just sucks. So all we can do as contractors is really try to push for those conversations, with the end users and try to close the loop on everything before we can try to get in there. And to make sure that people are aware that, hey, if you don't give me the AV design and what you need from me roughed in all over the place, with rings and strings and conduit in the walls and just, open boxes for your AV or security vendors to just come in and plug their stuff in, you're really setting yourself up for failure. The phrase that we like to use in construction is that you're really setting yourself up to be pregnant. What does that mean? Once you're pregnant, you're stuck with it and that thing's just going to grow, right? So, and that's what happens with change orders and stuff like that. So that's a tough situation to be in. And again, in a world where everybody's in such a rush to get drawings out the door and to get things permitted and to get issue for bid sets out and to start construction because the owner needs to show activity happening on site and that things are happening. These things often, they just get pushed down the line, and then, jamming in at the end is just a huge clusterfuck, for lack of a better word. And the last thing is my biggest pet peeve. And again, contractors have to look in the mirror here and, what can they do to be better? But it's multiple rounds of punch list. Nobody likes multiple rounds of punch list. And if you don't know what a punch list is, that's when a job is complete and the architect walks through with the owner and they point out all the things that need to be fixed. You got to paint this wall over here. There's a nick on the wall. We have a floor tile out of whack here. Maybe the floor base needs to be fixed over there. Maybe you're missing a light fixture over here that has to be put in. It's the last list of stuff that has to be done and complete before the project can be considered done, and you can final bill and get that final payment and financially close out and all those things. Multiple rounds of punch list happen way too often. And then what happens is you go around, you do a punch list, you address it, they come back and they go to sign off to make sure all those things are done. And while they're signing off, they're like, oh, well, you got to do this too. And there's also a light fixture missing over there. And, there's a scuff in the wall over there. And that marker board has a nick in it. All of those types of things. And it sucks. And it's really hard to get away from. And it's kind of a vicious circle or a never ending circle or a spiral that just costs a lot of people money. And this is when a lot of people end up getting sour, is at the end of a project, and that bad taste is left, whether it's on the architect side, the engineer side, the owner side, the subcontractor side, because everybody's staring at their profit margin, they're staring at their budgets, they're staring at the quality of the job, and everybody wants the highest quality and the highest profit margin and the lowest cost that they possibly can get. And they're just watching that eat away, right? So what do we have to do? First of all, if you're a contractor, you should never, ever do a punch list before you're done. This is tough because the schedule pushes, but nobody wants to move an end date. And then your time to punch list gets crunched. You wanted 3 weeks or you wanted 2 weeks. Now we're down to 3 days and we only have time to do a really quick punch. And there's still stuff on the job site and ladders and job boxes, and people really aren't still done with their work. And you can't even see everything to adequately punch it out. It's tough. That's when the architects get pissed off, is when they get called in too early, when work isn't actually done and it's actually not even ready to punch list, but we're punching anyway. And this is where the blame game starts, right? So as a contractor, you should always try to hold your 2 to 3 weeks to do your punch list, address it, or do a walkthrough. You want everybody to be there. You want your client to be there. You want your architect to be there. You want to make sure that they designate people clearly. This person's doing my punch list. You want a week or two to address it. Then they come back and they sign off that everything is absolutely done. And you want to do that not only when all of the scope is actually done, but you want to actually do that when furniture still isn't in. The client can't move in. You have to hold the client off, right? We have to have time to get all of our trades off site, right? The architects come in and it is an empty site. There isn't a desk. There isn't a table. There isn't anything on site. We fix all of those things and then the client moves in, right? That's the best way to do it. We as contractors have to defend and fight tooth and nail to hold our punch list duration. Everybody tries to eat away at it on every single project. And we have to educate our clients. We have to educate the architect. We have to educate everybody on why that's there. We have to hold our line. We have to hold the line. And when you do that, and when you set up your project that way, and you're very clear, hey, we're doing one punch one time, and it's going to have the architect, it's going to have a representative from the owner, and this is it. And you communicate that in writing over and over again, that's the only way that that's going to happen. Otherwise, if you have the architect come in and you still got ladders out and you still got ceiling tiles out and you're still painting a wall over here and you're still going to finish the floor and the base over there, you are opening yourself for a second round of punch list. You are opening yourself for them to come and, yeah, okay, that we're going to check off that you did all these items, but I didn't get to see this place cleared out, cleaned, and I didn't get to see this scope complete yet. So now I have to add items over here. That's what the architect is going to do. Long and short of what I'm saying is that this item above all other items is where contractors shoot themselves in the foot the most. Okay. You can't shoot yourself on the foot when you do this. You have to put yourself in a situation to win. You have to put yourself in a situation where you're only going to get one round of punch list, and it's going to be so clean and so regimented that beyond any shadow of a doubt, if they want more after that, they're going to have to get people are going to have to get compensated for it. Right. And in your budgets, you should always have a contingency, or you should always have, painting allowances baked in to your bid packages so that you can take at least one round of punch list, maybe even two. I try to do that. I try to do a second round of punch list, especially with the painter. Why? It's not like I'm trying to stuff the project or overbid it, but because I know that at the end of the day, they're going to want to drive for that quality. It's going to make the client feel better. It's going to make the architect feel better. And it's going to make the sub feel better that they didn't get their profit margin eaten at their expense for the happiness of the client and the architect and the engineer. If you are an architect, especially a young architect, you should also be aware of this, right? You should be looking to have a successful project for your contractor and for your client. And you should also be advocating for holding the line on that part of the punch list. Don't play dumb. You know this. Architects know this. If you're a young architect, you may not know it, but you're going to know it after the second or third time you do this. Try to hold the line and insist that you need a clear job site and that you don't want to do it before the client moves in. You want all the ladders and gang boxes to be gone. You want everything buttoned up, and you don't want the client to move in yet with all of their furniture when you go do this. And then you can repunch it again afterwards, because architects and engineers, they also only carry one punch list. They don't price it so that they're going to come out for 2, 3, and 4 rounds of punch lists. It's also eating from their profit margin as well. And they are purely labor. So when they have to go out there 3, 4, 5 times to do punch lists and confirm that they're done, that's their profit margin dwindling. They don't want it any more than the contractors want to do it. So listen, at the end of the day, did a lot of defending of the architects and the engineers and the design team there. When it comes to my career in construction management, I think above all else, the mindset that's enabled me to be successful is extreme ownership. To take ownership of putting other people in situations to succeed, because the more you do that, the more it is going to bounce back to you, not only make your life easier, but alleviate you of the blame, number one. Number two, create that win-win-win-win-win scenario. Win for the owner, win for the architect and the engineer, win for the client rep if there's a client rep, win for your team members as a construction manager, win for your subcontractors, and a win for their vendors. So you can count those wins up. I call it 6 Sigma. There's at least 6 layers of winning that I just described there. So, when you come into the industry, there's a lot of people that will complain and say that they hate architects, they hate engineers, they hate when this happens, they hate when this happens, and it happens on every job. Okay, well, if it happens on every job, we got to do a better job at making sure that we're not standing on the train tracks and watching that train track come at us and getting ran over. We're going to make sure that we're doing that for our clients and our architects and our engineers. And we're only going to do that by communicating adequately and diligently. So extreme ownership is the word. All of this is covered and then some in the course that I had mentioned. So please go take a look at that, at the link in all of my bios. Again, that's why we're here. We're here to share this knowledge. We're here to make young people aware when they come onto the job. Hey, this stigma is out there, but be aware that there's another side of the story, right? There's always 3 sides to the story. There's one side, there's another side, and then there's the truth. So what you need to do is figure out how you can bring value into that situation, take extreme ownership, and create wins for everybody else. So that's all we have for this episode. If you're still listening, I appreciate you sticking around. We love you, and we'll see you next time.